My phone rang at 2:11 a.m., and before I could even say hello, she was screaming, "You have to give me the money. He's my son too." And just like that, everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and guilt cracked wide open. Let me take you back, because this story isn't just about inheritance or money. It's about betrayal so deep, it infected everything. It's about a death I thought was tragic, until I learned the truth from the one person who should have protected him the most. My name is Rachel. I'm 38, and I've been raising my nephew, Caleb, since he was 5. His father, my older brother Nathan, died in a freak car accident 3 years ago. At the time, it was heartbreaking, senseless. Nathan was a good man. He was the kind of guy who showed up early to parent-teacher meetings and stayed late to clean up after school fundraisers. He was the steady one, the calm in our chaotic family. He was also married to Clara, and that's where things get complicated. Clara was beautiful, charismatic, the type who could charm your entire dinner table while slipping her hand into your husband's back pocket. She and Nathan got married after only 6 months of dating. My mom always said Nathan was blinded by her sparkle. I used to think that was just bitterness talking. I don't anymore. After Nathan's death, Clara unraveled. At least, that's what I told myself. She stopped coming to Caleb's school events, left him with babysitters for days at a time, and eventually just stopped being a mom. When CPS stepped in, I was the one who got the call. I didn't hesitate. I took Caleb in, legally became his guardian, and started putting his life back together. Clara didn't fight me. Not once. She just disappeared. I hadn't heard from her in over a year when the call came. 2 in the morning, my phone vibrating on the nightstand like a tiny earthquake. I saw her name, Clara, and every instinct told me to ignore it. But something in me said answer. She was crying, not the kind that sounds sad, but the kind that sounds dangerous. Desperate. She was slurring her words, maybe from alcohol, maybe from something else. "Rachel, I need the money. Caleb's trust. I know it's in your name. You don't understand. They're coming for me. I need it now." I sat up in bed, heart pounding. "What the hell are you talking about?" She kept going. "I made a mistake. I made so many mistakes. But it was never supposed to happen like that. I didn't mean for him to die." Silence. I stopped breathing. "What did you say?" She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, heavy and erratic. "I was supposed to scare him. That's all. Just scare him into signing the papers." "What papers?" "I thought if he believed he was in danger, he'd sign over the investment account. We were behind on everything, and he refused to help. I hired someone, just to put pressure. A tale. A threat. But they didn't follow the plan." "Are you saying you had someone threaten Nathan? And he died?" "I didn't know they'd go that far," she screamed. "I never wanted him to crash. I thought he'd be scared and do what I needed. I thought I could fix it before it went too far." I was shaking, physically shaking. I had believed for 3 years that my brother's death was just bad luck, wet roads, a deer in the dark, a sudden swerve. But now, this woman, the mother of his child, was telling me she orchestrated it? Clara hung up before I could ask more. I stared at the dark ceiling for what felt like hours. My partner, James, eventually woke up and asked what was wrong. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. I just kept hearing her words on repeat. I didn't mean for him to die. The next morning, I went into full damage control mode. I contacted my lawyer, explained what happened without mentioning Clara's confession, and had Caleb's inheritance locked down tighter than Fort Knox. It was already in a trust, meant to be untouched until he was 21, but I wasn't taking chances. I filed a restraining order. I called the police anonymously and reported a potential confession connected to a suspicious death. I did everything, except tell Caleb. He's 8 now, sweet, shy, and still sometimes asks why his mommy doesn't call on his birthday. Here's where I become the villain, at least, to Clara. 3 days later, she showed up at my house. Hair a mess, eyes bloodshot, mascara streaking like war paint. She begged on my front porch, screamed about how she was his mother and had rights, that I was poisoning him against her. I told her to leave. She said she'd tell everyone I was manipulating the inheritance for myself. Then, like some kind of final twist in a Greek tragedy, she said, "If you don't give me the money, I'll tell Caleb the truth. That his daddy died because of me. That his aunt knew and didn't tell him." I froze. That's when I realized just how sick she was. "You do that," I said quietly, "and I will bury you in court so deep, you'll forget what daylight looks like." She hasn't come back since. But now I'm haunted by a question I can't shake. Should I tell Caleb the truth? Not now, not at 8, but someday? Does he deserve to know what really happened to his father? Or do I carry that burden so he doesn't have to? And more urgently, am I the asshole for keeping it from him? And for keeping every cent of that money out of Clara's hands, even if she is still his mother? Because sometimes, I wonder if the worst betrayals come from people who were supposed to love you most. And what scares me isn't what Clara did. It's that she might still think she can fix it. With money. With lies. With blood. And I'm the only one standing in her way. I tried to return to normal after that night, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every time Caleb laughed, I flinched. Every time he asked a question about his dad, I had to steel myself not to fall apart. I'd say something generic like, he loved you more than anything, or he'd be so proud of you, but inside, I was screaming. Because now I knew his father didn't just die, he was killed, and the person responsible was the woman who gave him life. I couldn't go to the police directly, not without proof. Clara's confession had come in the form of a desperate, rambling, possibly drunk phone call in the middle of the night. No text, no recording, nothing admissible. James kept telling me I did the right thing by locking the money down. That Clara's threats were empty. But what he didn't understand was that this wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the weight I now carried. The knowledge that Nathan's death wasn't fate or misfortune but a consequence of someone's greed. A few weeks passed. I avoided contact with Clara entirely. She didn't show up again. Not at our home. Not at Caleb's school. Not even to challenge the restraining order. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd run. Fled the country. Or overdosed. I almost hoped she had. Then I got another call. This time from her sister. Rachel? It's Kim. I know we haven't talked in a while, but something's wrong with Clara. I sat down slowly. What do you mean? She's been paranoid. Talking about people watching her. She swears you're trying to get her arrested. I didn't respond. Kim sighed. Look, I don't know what's going on between you two. But she came over last night, completely unhinged. She said you're going to tell Caleb what she did. She said it's all falling apart. She told you. I asked. No, not details. Just that she messed up, and now you're weaponizing it. Rachel, she's not well. And I'm worried she's going to do something reckless. I hung up without promising anything. I didn't know what to do with that information. I didn't feel responsible for Clara's mental state, but I did feel responsible for Caleb's safety. So I made a decision. I installed cameras around the house. I had the locks changed. I alerted the school and gave them a copy of the restraining order. I even enrolled Caleb in a kids' counseling program, under the pretense that it would help him talk about his dad. But still, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came 2 weeks later. James and I were out grocery shopping with Caleb when I got a notification on my phone from the security camera. Motion detected. Back door. I opened the app and froze. Clara, in our backyard, holding something metallic. A crowbar? James saw my face and grabbed my wrist. What is it? Clara, I whispered. She's trying to break in. We rushed home. Called the cops. By the time they arrived, she was gone, but the back door was damaged, the lock nearly forced open. They took a report, but again no charges. No clear evidence linking her to the scene, even though I had video. They said it wasn't definitive. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I filed for full termination of her parental rights. It was a messy, ugly process. One that made me feel like I was stripping away the last legal thread between Caleb and the woman who gave birth to him. But I knew I had no choice. Not after what she'd confessed. Not after she tried to force her way into our home. The court date was set. But before it arrived, there was one more twist. I was cleaning out the garage one weekend, trying to find old photos of Nathan for Caleb's school project. James was helping, sorting through boxes. That's when he found it. A small, dusty laptop. Was this Nathan's? He asked. I turned. No. His was a desktop. Maybe this was Clara's. We plugged it in. It still worked. No password. What we found changed everything. Emails. Dozens of them. Between Clara and a man named Eric B. An ex-boyfriend, I assumed. The messages dated back to 6 months before Nathan's death. They started out flirtatious, then escalated into something else. Talk of plans, money, pressure, and then, finally this. He's too stubborn. He won't sign. You said you could make him afraid, so do it. But no blood. Just scare him. That email was dated 2 weeks before the crash. There was another one, 3 days after Nathan died. What the hell did you do? He's dead. This isn't what I asked for. You said just tail him. James and I stared at the screen in silence. He spoke first. Do you think this is real? I nodded. My throat was dry. It fits too perfectly. I printed everything. Every email. Every attachment. I took it to my lawyer. 2 weeks later, Clara was arrested for conspiracy to commit manslaughter. The trial is still pending. She's out on bail, living with Kim, who doesn't speak to me anymore. She sent me a text that read, "You ruined her life. You'll have to live with that." But I didn't ruin anything. Clara did that all on her own. Caleb still doesn't know. He's too young. He still draws pictures of his mom and leaves them under his bed in case she comes back. My heart breaks every time I find one. I keep them all. And I know that one day, when he's older, I'll have to tell him the truth. Not just that his father didn't die by accident, but that the woman who gave him life also took away someone else's. I don't know how to say that without destroying him, but I also know I can't lie forever. And now I sit with that question burning inside me again. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for fighting so hard to keep Clara out of his life that I'm slowly erasing her entirely? Am I the asshole for keeping the truth from him while shaping the version of his father I want him to remember? Am I the asshole for choosing justice over grace? Because sometimes I wonder if the line between protecting someone and controlling their story is thinner than we think. And maybe, just maybe, I crossed it. The courthouse was quiet the morning Clara's pretrial hearing began. I wasn't required to be there, but I showed up anyway. I sat in the back, wearing black slacks and a cardigan Nathan once gave me. I thought I'd feel triumph, some cold satisfaction seeing her in handcuffs, but I didn't. All I felt was hollow. Clara looked small sitting at the defense table. Her hair was dull, her frame thinner, almost ghost-like. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her public defender spoke on her behalf, requesting a delay to prepare a defense. The prosecution submitted the email evidence we'd recovered from her laptop. They also entered the restraining order and the security footage as part of the case. But the biggest bombshell came not from the state attorney but from Clara herself. After the hearing, as she was being escorted out, she stopped in the hallway. She turned her head finally and locked eyes with me. Her voice was quiet, raspy, but clear. I wasn't trying to kill him, Rachel. I just needed him scared. He was going to take Caleb and leave me. I was going to lose everything. My legs went numb. She added, "It was you he was turning to. You. He trusted you more than me. He always did." And then she was gone. Her words followed me home, haunted me for weeks. Because deep down I knew what she said was true. Nathan had confided in me near the end. He told me Clara was spending recklessly, that she'd emptied out their savings, opened new credit cards, even tried to forge his signature to access Caleb's college fund. He was planning to separate, maybe file for full custody. But he hadn't acted fast enough. She beat him to Iton the worst way possible. I didn't tell Caleb what happened at the courthouse. Instead, I focused on his 8th birthday coming up. He wanted a party with dinosaurs, chocolate cake, and exactly 8 candles. I gave it to him. I invited his whole class, decorated the living room in green streamers and cardboard volcanoes, and played the T-Rex roar sound effect on loop until James nearly lost his mind. Clara didn't call. He didn't ask about her. I thought maybe, just maybe, you could move on. Until Kim showed up at my door. She looked nervous, eyes darting behind her like someone was watching her. I didn't even get a chance to speak before she blurted, "She's pregnant." I blinked. "What?" "Clara. She's pregnant. She says it's Eric's. But Eric's gone disappeared. She's terrified. She wants to make a deal." I crossed my arms. "A deal?" "She says if you drop the charges, she'll sign over full custody of Caleb. No court. No appeals. You just walk away. She'll leave town. You never have to see her again." I stared at Kim like she'd just spoken in tongues. "She killed my brother." "She didn't mean to. You said that yourself." I stepped forward. "She hired someone to intimidate him, and then tried to break into my home. She has no business negotiating anything. She's scared. She's alone. And she's still manipulating everyone around her." I snapped. "Get off my porch." Kim didn't argue. She left. But that conversation left a splinter in my brain. Because it raised another horrible question. What if Clara really was pregnant? What if this child, another innocent life, was about to be born into the chaos she created? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Caleb. About the day he might learn not only that his father was killed but that his mother had another child and abandoned them both. I didn't want to explain that. I didn't want to have to lie either. So I reached out to my lawyer. I want to be prepared, I said, in case she gives birth and comes back for Caleb again. I want airtight custody. I want everything documented. He agreed. We set up a formal motion to submit additional evidence to the judge before the next court date: emails, testimony, and behavioral history. But the twist came sooner than expected. A few days later, I got a voicemail. It was Clara. She sounded different. Her voice was calm, but detached. Rachel, I'm going away. I can't do this anymore. You win. Caleb's better off without me. Just tell him I loved him, even if I was never good at showing it. I played the message 6 times. Then I called the police. They found her that night in a hotel room outside the city, wrists slit, unconscious but breathing. She'd left a note in her bag. It was addressed to Caleb. I never read it. I handed it to my attorney. The hospital placed her on psychiatric hold. She was later transferred to a mental health facility for evaluation. The court declared her mentally unfit to stand trial for now. And just like that, everything paused. No court dates. No custody battles. No hearings. Just silence. Caleb asked me the next morning, "Is Mom okay?" I lied. "She's resting. She needs time to get better." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. But I didn't. Not fully. What do you do when the villain in your story is also the mother of your child? How do you explain grief that's tangled with rage? Love that's laced with betrayal? Truth that's too dangerous to speak? I started therapy myself. I needed it. I told the therapist everything. The night calls, the emails, the break-in, the voicemail, the confession, the laptop, the guilt. She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "You're trying to save everyone. But who's saving you?" That cracked something open in me. Because for 3 years, I'd been in survival mode, building walls around Caleb, around our home, around my own heart. I'd shoved grief aside to be strong, to stay composed, to be the adult in the room. But I'd never allowed myself to mourn Nathan, or the fact that his killer was someone we once called family. So I took her advice. I gave myself permission to feel it all. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, the crushing responsibility. And I realized something. This wasn't just about Caleb anymore. It was about justice, about truth, about legacy, Nathan's, and mine. I wrote a letter to Caleb to be opened on his 18th birthday. In it, I told him the truth, the whole truth. I didn't sugarcoat what Clara did, but I also didn't paint her as a monster. I told him she was sick, lost, broken, but that once, a long time ago, she loved his father. And that maybe, deep down, she loved him too. I sealed it, locked it away in a drawer. Someday, when he's old enough to understand that people can be both villains and victims, I'll give it to him. Until then, I'll just keep raising him the best I can. And hope that one day, he sees all I did not as an act of erasure, but of protection. Because that's all I ever wanted. To protect him, even from his own mother. 6 months later, the legal system finally caught up with Clara. Her mental evaluation concluded she was fit to stand trial barely. Her psychiatrist testified that while she showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder and emotional instability, she fully understood right from wrong at the time of Nathan's death. The judge reinstated the charges: conspiracy to commit manslaughter and child endangerment. Clara pled not guilty. The trial date was set. The days leading up to it felt like waiting for a hurricane. I didn't know how hard it would hit, only that it was coming. My lawyer warned me that if Clara took the stand, her defense might try to paint me as a manipulator, that I stole Caleb, that I fabricated the emails, that I wanted Nathan's money for myself. I laughed out loud when he said that, but then I stopped. Because it wasn't funny. This wasn't just about Clara being held accountable. This was about me being dragged through the mud for doing what I thought was right. At night, James and I rehearsed every possible question the prosecution or the defense might throw at me. We went over the timeline, the calls, the voicemails, the emails, the court filings, the night she showed up with a crowbar. Everything. And still, nothing could have prepared me for the moment she entered the courtroom. She was thinner, gaunter. Her eyes had lost their fire. She wore a gray suit that hung off her body like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. She didn't look at me. Not once. Caleb stayed with James's sister during the trial. He thought I was at work, and part of me hated the lie but also knew the truth was a weight he didn't need. The prosecution was methodical. They laid out every detail. The The financial desperation, the affair, the emails, the manipulation, the escalation, the break-in attempt, and finally, the voicemail. When I took the stand, I told the truth. Not just what happened, but how it felt. The confusion, the betrayal, the grief, and most of all the rage. I told the jury that Nathan was my brother, but more than that was good, steady, trustworthy, a father who loved his son more than anything, and that his life was stolen not by fate, but by someone who couldn't accept consequences. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she shocked everyone. She admitted everything. I never wanted him dead, she said quietly. But I was selfish. I was desperate. I let it get out of control. I thought if I could scare him, I could save myself. But I destroyed everything instead. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge seemed momentarily stunned. Her attorney stared at her like she'd just detonated their defense strategy. But it didn't matter. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty. On all charges. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. She sobbed as the verdict was read, but not for herself. For Caleb. At least, I think that's what it was. I'll never know for sure. After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse, trying to breathe. James wrapped his arm around me. It's over, he said. But it wasn't. Not really. Because now I had to decide what to do with the truth. Caleb was growing older, sharper. He asked harder questions. He noticed more. Why his friends had moms at school plays, and he didn't. Why I got tense every time he said Clara's name. I couldn't hide behind fairy tales forever. So, on his 10th birthday, I took him to the beach. Just the two of us. We walked barefoot near the tide until the sun began to dip. Then I sat him down. Your dad loved you more than anything in this world, I began. And I need to tell you something important. Something about him. And your mom. He looked up at me, curious, but calm. I've always promised to tell you the truth, I said. Even when it's hard. And this is hard. I told him what I could. That his dad died in an accident, but not a random one. That someone made bad choices, terrible ones that led to it. That his mom had been hurting and scared and made mistakes. I didn't go into the conspiracy or the emails. Not yet. Just enough for him to start building his understanding of a world that isn't always fair. He didn't cry. He just nodded. Did she love me? He asked. I swallowed hard. In her own way. But she couldn't be the mom you needed. So I became that person. Because you deserved better. He sat with that for a long time. Then he leaned into me and said, Thanks for telling me. I think I knew, kind of. I'm glad you didn't lie. That night, after he fell asleep, I pulled out the letter I'd written, the one meant for his 18th birthday, and I added a few more lines. He's ready sooner than I thought. He's stronger than I ever hoped. And he sees Minute just as the aunt who took him in bit the woman who chose to tell him the truth, even when it broke my heart. Years passed. Caleb grew up. Kind. Brilliant. Thoughtful. He joined a high school debate team. Got into UCLA on a full scholarship. Started mentoring kids who came from complicated homes. He never hid where he came from. He told his story with pride and softness, always ending with, I wouldn't be here if my aunt hadn't stepped in. He visited Clara once when he turned 17. He told me afterward that it didn't change how he felt about her, but it gave him closure. She's not a monster, he said. Just broken. Like a mirror someone tried to put back together. Then he looked at me and added, You're the one who taught me not to break. That night, I cried for the first time in years. Tears of grief. And relief. And release. Because finally it felt like the storm had passed. He's 21 now. Studying law. Wants to be a family attorney. Says he wants to help kids like he was. Says people deserve someone in their corner who won't give up on them. I kept the trust fund safe all those years. And on his birthday, I handed him the papers. He cried when he realized the money had grown to nearly triple its original value. I don't care about this, he said. You could have spent it. I couldn't, I replied. It was his. Your dad wanted this for you. And I realized something then, something deep and true. The most important inheritance I ever gave Caleb wasn't the money. It was the story, the truth, the proof that love can survive betrayal. That family isn't blood, it's the people who choose you, raise you, fight for you, and never stop believing that you deserve the whole truth, even when it hurts, even when it's ugly, even when it shatters everything you thought you knew. Because from the ashes of that truth, something stronger can be built, something honest, something real, Something worthy of the man I knew Nathan would have wanted his son to become. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure Caleb never forgets that.